This is Living Raw Radio, and I'd love to welcome a really, really special woman. It's interesting that when you think about being female and you think about being a woman who gets things done, I always worry because in the business that I'm in, because I'm in a health business and I see women coming into me and they're coming in with so many different kinds of problems. And I feel and I see that we have become, it's not even like we became men because we did that a really long time ago. We sort of became this hybrid of looking and sounding female while being very, very male. And I see the enormous amount of effect it has on the body. I see the effect it has on our cortisol levels, on our fertility, on huge amounts of the body. And it's something that has actually been a really big problem in my client base. And the other thing that I noticed with it is that there's such a distinct difference in the lives we live compared to our mothers' lives. So you don't also have people to go to say, I don't know how to cope. I'm struggling. And there's that really big difference. And as women, I think we really need those communities. So when I got an email in going, there is this book that's been written by this woman called Tanishka, who talks about how to connect to the feminine, connect to the power of the sacred feminine, and talks about it. I kind of leapt slightly through the email and went, give me, want to talk to her. So I'd love to introduce you to Tanishka. Am I pronouncing your name right, first of all?
Yes, thank you.
And welcome. Thank you very much for joining me.
Oh, I love what you've articulated. It's a pandemic, and I agree, we've had the era of shoulder pad wearing and fighting to get external power. And there's been, an acknowledgement that is not conducive to the way of the feminine. And therefore, it's not going to serve us if we're imitation men. I think it was Jung that said, a woman that is operating of her masculine is at best an imitation male. And we're all masculine, feminine. But the gender that we incarnate into, our primary gender, must be the foundation energy that we operate out of, and then have the opposite gender as a complementary energy. And the thing is, after 5,000 years of losing touch with ancient feminine wisdom teachings and customs, we don't even know what feminine looks like. We can't even articulate it because we haven't had, the rites of passage handed down. So it is very exciting that more and more women are realizing, oh, hang on, I can't keep working in a manic way, which is what happens when women are caught in mind, in the rational mind. Then, we feel like a rat on a treadmill, and there's so much to be done. There's so, the world is soul sick in so many ways. And, the Dalai Lama said the world would be saved by the Western women. So women are feeling this pressure of, I've got to find my Amazon warrior. I've got to get in there and help fix this problem. But if it's coming from a fear-based belief, and I've journeyed this one and still am, such as, our girls aren't safe in a predatory culture. If we look at, say, the pandemic of pornography use, it's the global stats are 78% of all men are using it minimum of once a week, and 88% of the images are violent fetish porn, and it's on the increase. And the number one search term is teen. So, there's a lot of women that understandably are concerned about the rise in sexual assault and violence against women. And so there's a real sense of, I can't stop and rest. I've got to use every last breath I can to make a difference. But when we're operating on that, we're actually adding to the problem, because we're anchoring in the collective thought form an affirmation that girls aren't safe, and our own manic behavior is sabotaging not just ourselves personally, but the work that we're so passionate about sharing. So what I'm realizing more and more as a woman is that the greatest thing we can do to heal patriarchy, which is simply the imbalance, the lack of the feminine in both men and women, is to heal our feminine, which is coming into alignment, living in a cyclic way. So instead of, just having a to-do list and trying to get through that by the end of the day, looking at, for instance, okay, well, it's dark moon, especially for women being governed by the lunar cycle, even if they finish menstruating, they continue to cycle energetically. That is the time when we most need extreme self-care.
And when is the dark moon? Please tell me so that everybody gets that.
That's 2 weeks after full moon. So, we watch the moon diminish in its light. And as it diminishes in its light, we experience more of our darker thoughts and our darker feelings, and we become, lower energy. So this is, I advise women, cook a bit extra the rest of the month and put it in the freezer, or, don't give yourself a hard time about the house being a mess. It's okay for the kids to sit down and watch a movie around the dark moon. Don't martyr yourselves,
give yourself a break around then.
Right, because then what happens is we go into hysteria. And I think that hysterectomies are literally the feminine, which is the inner self, particularly the nervous system, sounding the alarm and just saying, this is mad. The way we live is mad, and our bodies are saying enough. So, you're a health practitioner. I can't imagine not taking magnesium daily for my nervous system, and also the emotional freedom technique I'm finding really helpful for clearing those fear-based patriarchal thought forms, which helps then to clear it in the collective.
What I found really interesting, because one of the reasons that we're talking is because you've got a book launching. I think it's on the 6th of July. Is that 6th of June? Is that right?
6th. Yeah.
And it's called Goddess Wisdom: Connect to the Power of the Sacred Feminine Through Ancient Teachings and Practices. And I find it really interesting reading this, because I didn't understand literally how historical and how thorough the suppression of the feminine, and how completely focused it's been. I was having a chat with a girlfriend of mine who, in fact, I was thinking I should, the two of you should meet. I should introduce you. Her name's Shelley von Stronkel, and she does horoscopes and astrology, and she was a guest of mine. I think she's a guest, and her show airs after yours. But I was talking to her, and she says that she absolutely finds it, within the terms of astrology, she finds it how troubling that it took her such a long time to understand that there was a divine mother alongside a divine father, whereas all we've ever learned is that God is masculine, God is male. And, that she just is like, what happened? How did that all disappear off the face of the earth? And you've gone through a lot of the history of this and talking about how, it's just been consciously suppressed, and it was a combination of the church and general patriarchy that did that, right?
Yeah, look, it was the rise of the empires. So around 3000 BC, we had the astrological age of Aries.
Yeah.
So we saw the rise of these empires. Exactly. And if we look at how much territory the Roman Empire had, and Rome outlawed any ancient women's practices and wisdom. And the reason for that was we posed a threat, because the feminine teaches people to become sacred and sovereign beings. So a war-based empire demands duty to the state over love of one's family. So, they were at sort of loggerheads with each other. So it was a very deliberate act, and you know, the rewriting of the Bible, and just you know, putting a demonizing slant on anything that was feminine. And here we are a few thousand years later, and people don't stop to question. You know, it's that thing, if you don't know what you don't know. So, for instance, Friday the 13th, that's equated with, you know, spooky movies and a day of evil. Well, originally, Friday the 13th was a day sacred to the goddess, because Friday, Freya, it's named after the goddess of love in the Norse tradition, and there's 13 lunar cycles. So people would celebrate by taking the day off and making love. So, you know, and the five-pointed star is simply the shape that the planet Venus makes as she moves through the cosmos. Again, that was turned into a symbol of evil. So it's so embedded in our subconscious that it's really impacted our feminine expression and our identity.
Yeah, I mean, I think so completely, because also when you look at even simple things like where I work in alternative medicine, I know you've covered this as well in your book, you know, it's become, we're not allowed to talk about things that are good for you, because if it isn't a pill and therefore controlled by a pharmaceutical company and therefore controlled by absolutely some kind of male hierarchy, you're not allowed to discuss it. And, you know, you sound insane saying this stuff, but it is absolutely, I can't use the words heal in anything that I write. And I'm like, well, why not? Well, because only medicine can heal.
Yes. And yet the caduceus, the symbol for modern medicine, is an ancient goddess symbol. You know, the money symbol is an ancient goddess symbol. So all of our symbols have been hijacked. And what you're saying about, you know, the bullying tactics of the pharmaceutical industry, this is just the same old witch hunt that, you know, Penelope Redgrave back in the 70s, in her book, The Wise Wound, claimed that there were 9 million women in that genocide, the burning times of old Europe. Not all were burnt, some were drowned. But point being, you know, it was primarily for herbalism and midwifery.
Exactly.
So the same industries are still being persecuted, but it's being done through the law, you know, like the stamping out of homeopathy, you know,
Completely.
because of the worldwide vaccination. So, you know what I mean? This is so big.
One of the things that I also noticed, that when you talk about the different initiations and what, because at the end of every chapter is an exercise of what to do, and so much of it is based on, partly it's within the body, but it's also based on like attaching yourself to the lunar cycles and, you know, reconfiguring yourself with Earth. Would we have so much issues with climate change and all that stuff if we, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that, is this disconnect with the feminine, has it extended to such an extent that that's why we're disconnected to Earth? Because we don't value Earth as a sacred part of who we are, because it's a she. And what we do is we'll do anything and just keep going because there's no comeback. But we're hurting Earth by doing that.
Yeah, and the thing is, we are fractals of her. We're all interconnected. Right. We're the one organism. So the ancient wisdom teachings of the feminine, which all our ancestors, you know, it doesn't matter where they hailed from, you know, all the indigenous tribes all honoured the Earth Mother, because they understood how intrinsic their life was and how dependent they were, and they looked to nature as the spiritual teacher. You know, it's like she initiates us as the wheel turns. You know, for you over in the Northern Hemisphere, today was the first day of summer as we film this. Here where I am in Melbourne, Australia, it's the first day of winter. So, you know, for you, it's a time of really coming out and emerging and reconnecting with people and shining brightly. Whereas for me, it's a time of deeply going back into that deep womb within and looking at my shadow, looking at what I need to heal within myself. So nature is always initiating us. But if we are arrogant and think, oh, I don't believe in that stuff, whether we believe in it or not, it's like arguing with quantum physics, oh, I don't believe in quantum physics. It's all one and the same, everything in life is cyclic, from our spiraling DNA to the seasons. And we think, well, when is a wind at its strongest? It's when it's cycling. And so as a civilization, we need to come back into spiraling consciously with those natural cycles in humility, and also coming together in circle on a regular basis, on the understanding that within that construct, we accelerate our growth. We create a vortex to literally raise us up. And without it, we unconsciously spiral down into chaos and entropy.
Yeah, no, and I think that disconnect means that we come, when we come out of balance. What I do in my business is I see that physically. So I will see people that live these extreme lives, who don't ground themselves, who don't reconnect when they land, who don't understand literally. To me, it's again always for me about the body, but it's very cynical exercise to say stuff like fruit is bad for you. Because actually, if I make the fruit and blend it, pasteurize the crap out of it, kill all the enzymes and all the vitamins and nutrients, put it in a bottle, then it's good for me. But if I actually pick an apple and eat that, it's bad for me. And to me, that's a very cynical exercise, which again disconnects us from the things that really matter to us, because it disconnects us from good food, from health. And if you're reconnected and being nourished by your feminine, those are not conversations you would ever have.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like raw milk is illegal. It's illegal to not wear clothes, to be in our most natural, pure, innocent state. Anything that is natural is demonized, is in some way slanted. So, the healing of patriarchy, which is the dominion of the wounded masculine over the sacred feminine within all of us, regardless of our physical gender, this will only be healed when we acknowledge the beliefs that underpin it. Because we can bring in as much legislation as we like, saying, equal rights for women and equal pay structures, and, but if we aren't addressing the beliefs that are entrenched in the doctrines that have been conditioning us since birth, then we're not going to heal this, and you spoke before about how we're only shown the masculine as having any divine credibility. And it starts with that, because when we honor the divine in nature, we're going to come back into balance as a species.
Yeah. So what's the game plan? What are we meant to do? Because
okay.
I loved honestly, what I liked about this book, your book, is that it takes so many things that I know and feel and understand. I'm a good farmer's daughter, so I totally get that whole living with the earth thing. And you've changed some of it to intertwine the whole feminine with it. Like, I've never thought of chakras as having goddesses. I was just like, they have goddesses. And then I thought, God, that's so clever. So why wouldn't they? Because it's a universal energy. It's part of, the divine. But I love how it's so easy to read your book. And I like how it takes really basic principles and yet says, here's what's underneath it. Here's the depth underneath it. Here's where it came from. Here's how it's feminine. Here's how the sacred is part of it. So I love that. I was saying that it's funny that I got the book and sat down and just started reading it, and didn't stop, at all. And I just kept going, and I really enjoyed it. And I am a bookworm, but I really, really like the book. So what's the plan? What are we supposed to do?
Okay. So
I'm a woman that likes a plan.
Yeah, no, totally. I understand. It's empowering. So what I would say to any woman that's wanting to heal her feminine, and any man for that matter, is to understand the effect that the lunar cycle has on us to help balance your emotions, balance your psyche. And, you know, there's a chapter in the book on that, but also having a communal practice. The way of the feminine is to find our strength and our power by drawing together rather than blowing things apart. So to have not just a personal practice, say in the morning, you know, doing yoga or qigong or tai chi, but having a practice once a month where you sit in circle, you practice sharing power by each having the right to be equally seen, speak, and heard, but you practice being 100% vulnerable and transparent with yourself and with each other, and that develops the feminine, you know, that
But
we
that's
don't
hard.
carry shame.
That's hard. If you look at how we live here, and if you look at how my clients live, the majority, you know, of my audience, what we're doing now is where I come from. I mean, I'm Indian, and I was brought up in a very particular way, and there were feminine roles and you know, masculine, and there was positive and negative attached to that. But then what happened is I ended up there, and I've got 3 children that I'm paying and putting through school, and I have to show up every day and be as much of a man as being a woman. You know, there's no room for us, and it feels like there's no room to be soft and flowing because somebody will eat us up. So how in our really tense lifestyles do we get there?
Okay. I do understand the anguish. You know, I was a sole parent without any family support for many years. And if it wasn't for Circle, I wouldn't have gotten through, you know. So it's just one night a month, and you pull in whatever resourceful favors you can at your fingertips to make sure you get that one night a month, you know, where you sit in circle, and it's a child-free space, so you're showing up just for you. And what's so powerful about that is the feminine needs to feel held in order to let go, in order to be, rather than wear the pants, be in the mind, organizing everyone and doing, because that winds us up to the point where we can't unwind without, you know, very energetic sex or a stiff drink or marijuana or whatever it is people do to put the handbrake on and knock themselves out. So, you know, having a daily practice where every 90 minutes you just do deep breathing. So when you find you're racing, you're literally, you know, running through your day, you stop. And even if it's, you know, tied into when you go to the toilet, so that you're still multitasking, you know, you can say to your rational mind that's like the white rabbit, I haven't got enough time, you know. That's what you do, you know. And when you clean your teeth, you bless your mouth. Yeah, as you think about, I want to speak words of beauty today. So, you know, if we marry those mundane routines with sacred intention, then we start stepping into our grace as women. Yeah, we are sacred vessels. We just have to remember it and bring it into our cyclic routines.
But vulnerable, and I get that. I love the idea of the circle, because I like that women are so community oriented. And I think that that's really hurting us now, because our success has isolated us to such a large degree. So when I'm speaking at women's groups and stuff, I'm always saying, you know, you're not the only one that feels like this. There are so many women that feel like you do, because we are community animals. You know, we like that we're nourished by each other. But this whole thing about being vulnerable, I mean, you know, we're in London here. Like vulnerable, it's like that. Then we go to work and we have these really scary things happen to us. So how do you show up as vulnerable but still stay strong?
Okay, there is a wonderful Native American teaching that the greatest strength is gentleness. Okay, in other words, for somebody to be truly strong within, they have so much self-acceptance and self-healing, they can be naked in their vulnerability without immediately having to, put the social mask back on and look like they're holding it all together. I teach women to facilitate a safe space emotionally. And what happens when we step into that, we feel it. We feel held. So even if we didn't think we were sitting on stuff, as that talking stick gets passed around, it creates a vortex and it brings up our stuff. So even if we wanted to hold it together, boom, it's up and it's out. And what is exquisite about that experience is we see it in each other. And, don't get me wrong, it's not like we sit there crying our way through the whole evening. There is so much laughter.
You can't really put a bunch of women in a room and not have a lot of laughter.
Thank you. And that's part of it. We bring the light to the craziness of our lives and all the challenges and, the cosmic joke, laughing at ourselves and our own shadow behavior. But that's only possible because we get real. This is a space where the only rule is be authentic. It doesn't matter if you show up in your pajamas, but be authentic. And that's what's been missing from our culture. The ego constructs something that we think is going to be acceptable and meet with approval and be seen as lovable. And that puts people in a very tense state. So to have a space where you can drop it and you can be seen for who you are is the most profoundly healing experience you will have as a human being. And what it does for us is it helps us heal our shame and our self-loathing and our inner critic. And it's such a simple process. We're literally being a witness and seeing our sisters in whatever state they're in, whether they're joyous and we're celebrating that milestone with them, or whether they're really exploring the depths of their human frailty. We're just there for them. We're just witnessing them. And seeing them through the eyes of the heart, which is acceptance. And when we offer that compassion to a sister, not only does it open that love of sisterhood, but it opens up more compassion for ourselves, because this sister is a mirror of us. We're all going to feel like that at some point. Whether it's PMS or our mother-in-law visited or whatever the catalyst is, she is me, the I am presence. So the more our heart opens to our sisters, the more we heal, and that's the power of group, of circle.
Yeah, how do people find circles near them? Do you have to make them, or do they exist?
All right. In the book, there is a resource section. Okay.
Oh, my
author copies arrived today. So you will see in the resource section, there are several directories for red tents. And I'm sure there's probably more on Facebook if you did a search, but this is a good starting point. There's also women's, festivals and conferences and gatherings. There's all the different sacred sites.
So I didn't understand that. So red tents are the circles?
Yes.
So I have no idea.
Absolutely. There's a whole chapter on the red tent which explains the power of circle. And I have an online course where I teach people to create their own red tent circle, whether they want to do it just as a private circle with their closest, most trusted girlfriends, which is lovely to then welcome your daughters into, or whether you want to run public red tents, as a community service. We've trained women now in 43 countries. I mean, this thing is spreading like wildfire because women get a taste of it and then they go, oh my God, how did I ever live without this? I feel sane. I feel happy, So it's every woman's birthright to have this level of support. And what I personally feel is so great about it is when you're in a rhythm every month of sitting with the same women and sharing deeply, authentically, when there are those times, like when my back went into spasm or when I got shingles, it's not a big leap to then put a message in your, private Facebook group and say, hey, really needing some help. And boom, they are there. I had women packing my suitcase and others cooking for me to get me on the plane to go speak at London Mind, Body, Spirit as I'm, in the final stages of shingles. I couldn't have done it without my sisters.
Yeah.
So we will, when we're woven, we're strong. Okay. So this is about reweaving ourselves together, working together, because working alone is divide and conquer. That's operating as a patriarch within your own mindset, which is in separation, and it will manifest within the body as illness, and more within women than within men, because we're more sensitive.
Much more. And our ecosystems are so much more delicate, yet more complex. They
Right.
just are. Yeah. And I always say that. But then that is the one thing that I can think of to thank Donald Trump for, because that Women's March, I was like, absolutely. So that's why you came. I knew there was a reason. So I love the book. It's in the UK on the 6th of June.
Yes.
And so people should be able to find it everywhere.
Absolutely. And there's also an online course coming out the same day with Hay House. So, for those that are more visual learners, not everyone, if you're dyslexic or whatever, wants to sit down with a book. So, or people might want to do both. There are different
What's your website as well?
Oh, it's themoonwoman.com.
So MOON woman.com.
Yeah, moon as in moon.
Yeah,
woman.
lunar.
Yes.
And then this book will be through Hay House. The course will come out through Hay House, and that's where people can find it. And I'm sure it'll be in bookshops and Amazon and everywhere.
Yes, it's on Waterstones, it's Barnes and Noble, it's everywhere, and people can pre-order. So, if this comes out after June 6th, okay, that option isn't available. But
no, it's coming out. I think this will air the day before, the 2 days before, so people can pre-order then. Yes.
Oh, fantastic! Because if people pre-order, they save $5 off the retail price. But if they send me the proof of purchase, they'll get a free 5-day Elemental Goddess digital program too. So
amazing.
Yeah. And if anyone feels like joining me in Bali, I've got an Inner Goddess retreat happening in September. So that's another option.
I just like the whole join me in Bali bit. You kind of lost me after that. I was like, I'll just come to Bali, bugger it. Who cares why I'm coming? I'll come hang out.
Yeah, totally.
Thank you. That was so much fun to talk to you. It was lovely to finally connect as well.
Thank you.
I hope your book does really well, and I will help to spread the word. And I think it feels blessed. So it should do really, really well. Thank you so much, Tanishka. It was really great having you on as a guest. And my name is Geeta Sidhu-Robb, and this is Living Raw Radio. And yeah, it's fantastic. And we'll speak to you all again in a couple of weeks.